beautiful apartment in Rome with an outdoor balcony overlooking the dome of St. Peter's, and there resides a journalist and her pup covering the news of the day. I'm slightly jealous of that journalist, but very, very, very thankful for her work, and I'm so grateful to welcome her as our guest today. I am talking about Bree Dail, with us now from Rome, from that dreamy location. Hello.
Hello, Brooke. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be talking with you all the way from Rome. Yes.
Yes, and that is quite a backdrop. Welcome to the show. So
Yeah.
you are a Rome correspondent for National Catholic Register, Newsmax, Lifesite, and others, but originally from the States, right?
Yes, I am from the States. I am the Rome correspondent for Newsmax. I contribute to lots of publications, including National Catholic Register. So, yeah, I'm really blessed to be able to be here and to be working two jobs, as we were talking off camera. And my passion is really for serving the truth.
As if that weren't enough, you also are kind of a photographer as well, I would say, because I love your images from Rome.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really
And your pup.
Rome is just beautiful, and my pup, of course. I'm actually working on a book, so let's hope for that for American Pup in Rome, because Bella is really Bella and Lily, her little sister. Both of them are really just inspiring me to go out walking all over Rome, and who doesn't like to take pictures in such a beautiful place? I mean, Rome is photogenic, so
For sure.
I'm blessed.
From the
I'm really
gelato
blessed.
to,
Yes.
yes, absolutely. And also, you have a military background as well. I know naval surface warfare officer, you have a master's of diplomacy, and really that is notable for your background.
Yeah, it was an honor to serve, and it is what I do. Also, from my journalism, I am an expert in IT project management and strategic communication. So the military has been gracious enough to hire me on in an amazing position here. So I'm very blessed.
And thank you. Thank you for your service and what you do. And this interview is really important because, it is your job to investigate and report the news, but it seems like the media has become the story in some ways with the rise of fake news. We have the claims, the questions of objectivity, accuracy, integrity, and the power of big tech. So we're going to do our best to kind of touch on and cover those topics and more today. And I wanted to start with a quote that I pulled from The Economist, and it says, "There is a dangerous weakening of society's truth-producing infrastructure," speaking particularly about journalism and where we are today in the media. And you're in it every day. How true is that statement?
So true, so true. And Brooke, it's what's really difficult is that we are seeing it on both sides of the aisle, so to speak, politically. Unfortunately, the news has become more about, like you said, the journalist being the story rather than the story being the story or serving the truth. Journalism, we are taught at a very, minimal level, we're taught that, hey, you've got to serve the truth objectively, and that the story needs to be corroborated with facts. We're not there to form people's opinion. We're there to inform people so that they can make the right opinion, make the right decision. Unfortunately, that's not been the case. It's something that really was driven home to me when I was active duty and I was doing things with the military and the military's communications, that I realized very easily how easily misled people were, and how easily nowadays people were just buying into one particular narrative than the other. And it's often by the use of manipulation of emotions, right? So emotions are being so high in the last few years. Whether it's like, orange man bad on the left, or, everything is a conspiracy and everybody's out to get you on the right. There's a lack of communication. And now couple that with COVID and the lack of human dialogue, and we've completely seen a shutdown. And that's an unfortunate situation, because that's where crisis manipulation is at its best. And we are seeing that, unfortunately, with either the right or the left. And yes, even in Catholic media.
It's so interesting you brought up emotion, because I was looking, it was back in 2016 that Oxford actually chose as their word of the year. It's called post-truth. And now we hear it a lot. But the definition reads, it denotes circumstances in which objective facts are less influential in shaping public opinion than appeals to emotion and personal belief. And like you said, going back to like journalism 101, and what is it that journalists are taught? That is to be accurate, to be fair. Don't make yourself the story.
Right.
Know the integrity and be a voice for the voiceless. All of these things, tell essential truths. But I think for us as consumers of news, there's some confusion because we don't know half the time if we're reading investigative reporting or an opinion piece.
Yeah, and that's the big thing. I did a story about 2.5 years ago, interviewing an individual by the name of Gabriel, and he is a former CIA officer. And I put that as a wink and a nod because when you are in the CIA, you are always in the CIA. But in this, we talked about disinformation operations and what the CIA, which they're pros at this, what the CIA has done and what he did as a CIA officer was manipulation of the news. And I have actually experienced that on the other side, being the Navy, seeing that as well. So I was very concerned seeing early on the manipulation of communications. Now, something that I want to kind of point out, there's a video clip that Tucker Carlson brought out at the beginning of COVID, and this is an example. At the beginning of COVID, this town hall that was done via Skype, I believe, with Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden. And in this conversation, they're talking about COVID, but then she brings up universal health care and health care for women and all of these, ridiculous notions that they're trying to cram in talking about COVID. And then she said, this would be a terrible crisis to waste, as the saying goes. And I want people to understand that applies to either the left or the right at this point. So how do you get through that, Brooke? How do you go through and navigate? And the only way nowadays is to ask yourself critically, is this logical? Is this reasonable? Are there corroborative stories behind this? Is there factual data? And you have to ask, could this pass the smell test if you were, submitting this particular story as a paper in college? If that
Well,
can't happen, then
this is where it gets muddy, though, I think, because I think it was social commentator James Lindsay. I follow him. I like his work. And he said, and I'm paraphrasing here, that what's happening is a new truth is being reimagined and reconstructed by the media in some cases, where this is a truth that rewrites the definition of family. This is a truth that rewrites the definition of biological gender and sex, for example. And then those same creators of this truth put it forth and are using that to create a pseudo reality, which is a pretty dystopian stuff, because what happens is if we can't even come together on what is knowable, on what is true on a basic level, there's no compromise. So this is what's difficult, is we can't even align together on what is a man or a woman.
right. And you have to go back to again, the dialogue aspect, the conversation, the civil debate. One of the things that I've discussed with a colleague of mine who is going to be with me on a new radio program, we'll plug that in very soon. But Joey Mignolet, he is a walkaway Democrat, and he is also coming back into the Catholic Church. But he's got questions, and he's a millennial. And one of the things that really brought him into this journey is the fact that there were on many individuals like Ben Shapiro and others on the right, Michael Knowles, who consistently provide factual basis, factual evidence, good arguments, but they were not afraid to have that confrontation, but in a civil way. They would always provide, civility, but really hit those points with factual evidence, factual data, engage in debate. And he saw that the other side would just devolve into emotions. And because of that, he left. And I believe there's a majority of people out there who are standing by to see how we handle the debate and the civil engagement. But we're not going to ever have that if we don't have the ability and the platform for the free exchange of ideas. So what we are seeing right now with like the deplatforming in social media is the taking away of the voice of the people to be able to engage, and we do live in a almost post-Christian era, right? So what is truth? we've got to get back to that foundation of that, Socratic method of engagement to be able to even find that level playing field wherever that is,
Well,
and mission that way.
yeah, and I think that's what's so challenging because, like solar power windmills, this is what has been leveraged. It's our emotion. And so those emotions are being weaponized and people are being canceled and the most unbelievable, surreal Twilight Zone things are happening. And
Right.
I'm wondering, are you worried that we're approaching a time of censorship? How worried should we be about that?
Very worried, very, very worried. The question has to be, why are you silencing voices? One of the real concerns that I have is the disinformation. So I'll give a perfect example. As you see back here, we see St. Peter's right now. It will be popping on. Hopefully in a few minutes, we'll start to see the lights go on. A few weeks back, right after or right before the 20th, we heard this disinformation that said that, hey, because of a camera shot, there was sounds of fire, gunfire, and that the Vatican went dark, and the Pope was arrested, and people went berserk, right? But I question, why did that happen, especially individuals who are really critical thinkers. Why not step back for a second, take a breath, and say, who has the authority to arrest the Pope? He is a sovereign. He's a leader of a sovereign state. Who has that authority? No one has that authority. Okay, so is it really possible that there would be gunshots? And okay, so why don't we stop before we spread this and ask people who are here? And that started to happen. I started getting phone calls very, very early on in the morning. And I said, nope, St. Peter's is still on. And still, I had people on social media saying, how would you know? And I'm like, because I'm here. you know so there you have to ask yourself, why are they manipulating? What is the intent here? Because there are really bad actors, and it's been actually reported. We've had Russia, we've had China, we've had Iran working inside our election process, all the way up, using social media to manipulate the message. And we knew that happened in 2016, and now we know that it happened in 2021. We have to ask ourselves, is this logical? Is this reasonable? And we have to
The
navigate.
average busy mom who is not as ear to the ground as a journalist wants to know. Maybe this is an obvious question, but I don't know. But I really think, are there bots? Is that a real thing?
Yes, there are bots.
Okay.
There are lots of bots. And it's one of those things too, when people say, are there trolls? Yes, it's part of the game, it's part of
Right.
the social media world that we live in. It used to be that social media was the Wild West. Everybody had an opinion. Everybody could say behind their computers what they wanted to do, which actually I think is still a possibility today. The big question is, and to circle back to what you had said, to circle back to what you said, asked earlier, is it possible
I'm
that,
trying not to say that. I realize I actually say that a lot. Yeah.
I'm sorry, Jen. But could it be possible that we're looking at censorship? Yes. And here's the question that I ask all the moms out there: what would you do in order to protect your children? Right? Because if we say no censorship whatsoever, right? No complete free open speech, which is what the porn industry advocated for, then we have like utter chaos and anarchy. But if we say yes to censorship, then we have to ask the question, who is the authority to censor? Who should have that
Yeah.
authority? Should it be the people to say no, enough? Should it be the big tech? Should it be the government? And I actually, Brooke, put this out on Gab and on MayWe. I asked in a poll, who should have that authority? The vast majority of people who responded said the people, and the people should
Hmm.
discredit the journalists who push out fake news.
Yeah, and I mean, you look at the Federalist Papers and you look at our constitutional republic, and that's the way that it's always been. And wanted to ask you, it really leads up to what's happening with Tulsi Gabbard. I think a lot of people on both sides of the aisle have been supporting what she's doing. They have legal immunity under Section 230. And I have a quote where she says, "Let's be clear, the John Brennans, Adam Schiffs, and the oligarchs in big tech who are trying to undermine our constitutionally protected rights and turn our country into a police state with KGB-style surveillance surveillance are also domestic enemies and much more powerful and therefore dangerous than the mob, for example, who stormed the Capitol. Gabbard said in a video posted on social media, the argument says the First Amendment does not apply to private companies, but these are private monopolies. And she goes on to talk about there is a legal precedence to this. And so just curious to know what your thoughts are on that Section 230.
Well, I'm a journalist, so I'm there to inform and not form people's opinions. But I do think that she has a point to be made, and I think people need to hear what she says. She's a fellow veteran, and I respect her in many ways. And I think she also recognizes the trends that we have seen in oligarchies and actual dictatorships about how they move very quickly towards the censorship and the shutting down. And that, I want to say, Brooke, it was one of the things that really scared me leading up to the elections, was how very quickly they silenced the 45th president of the United States. How very quickly they did that. It was from one platform to another. And then there was a massive, and it's still going on, a massive wipe of many of the followers on these social media outlets. Many of us who had thousands of individuals following us. I lost thousands of people like almost instantaneously overnight. And the claim was that those particular accounts were Q accounts or whatnot. I mean, you've shut down voices. And when you do that, I said this, you put yourself in a position where you are risking putting a dog in a corner and hitting it enough times, it's going to bite. And so when we heard about people being utilizing the aspect of emotion to try to really rile up individuals, and then they went to the Capitol, I wasn't really surprised on that, because manipulation of communication, that's what's the result. And we can see that in Mao dictatorship. When we saw videos out of Mao when Mao was overthrowing in China, you can see exactly what they did, and it's very similar to what we're seeing right now. But people are pushing back, and I think that's the key to democracy.
So when you say on this poll that you threw out there, and most people voted that the people really should be the accountability balance, what does that look like in practical, unfolding of that?
Right. So I have tried in vain to speak with someone at Twitter, because they actually have a program going on right now called Birdwatch. Have you heard of this?
No.
So they've started it as a pilot program, and what they're trying to do is to get people who are engaged on Twitter to fact check things that are stated by other individuals. So this could or could not work, right? Because just the regular Joe could be a troll in there and just being like, "You're stupid," and put it on Twitter. But I don't think that's really how they're looking at doing this. I think instead they want people to be able to go back and debate with the people who have posted something as a statement, to say, actually, no, this particular report says this. Here's the link, and it's a Birdwatch. So I don't know exactly how it works, because they won't speak to me. So at this point, that's all that I've been able to gather. Will it work? I don't know, but I do believe that debate and about and using factual evidence to cross your opponent in debate, that's the way to go. And I think that we can see that on social media. But the big question has to be, are people being trained early on to be critical thinkers? And that's where I think we have to kind of look at we're talking about the working mom who's afraid of not being able to follow all the news, to be able to. The first thing you have to do, moms, is to train your kids to critically think and think logically. Use the logic, the basis of logic. And if you don't know logic 101, there's plenty of things out there that you can use in order to get to that, like, Aristotelian Socratic method of logic. Mm-hmm. And from that point, then you engage your kids early on in critical thinking. You're raising a generation who will question. And that's what's really needed today.
And it sounds a bit overwhelming. Okay, I have to, for myself, filter this. What is opinion? What is conjecture? What is fact? What is, this is truly objective. This is subjective right here. Every line, and I think what's good is we have learned, we have been trained to see, I believe that this is a trustworthy person. I believe this is a trustworthy source. But again, that's so tough. You're shaking your head. So what are your
Absolutely
thoughts
not.
about that?
People who I would say I would have trusted a year ago have been completely compromised, and I won't name their names. And when I say completely compromised, were warned about certain disinformation and published it anyways or used it. And I question, okay, what was the motivation on that? And it tends to go down towards money, or it could
Yeah.
be an ideology. So I have a saying that I put into my back pocket, and it's one that I kind of live my journalistic life on. Never trust, always verify, because in
Hmm.
today's unfortunate 24-hour a day news cycle, people are out there to get clicks. People are out there to make money. Motivations are that way, and even unfortunately in the Vatican, we have seen that there are individuals who are of the same mentality, and so we don't know who the motivations are. We have to pray about that. But I think right now, one of the big things we have to pray for is for discernment and the spirit of discernment and what God can give us in that, because He wants us to navigate these waters. But then I would also say, don't trust me, hold me accountable. Don't trust any of the Catholic media, hold them accountable. If they report something that is incorrect or is proven to be wrong, hold them accountable, because you can make a mistake, but if they don't retract and correct, they are not being good journalists, whether it's left or right or in the center, they're not being honest. And what we need today is accountability towards the truth.
And I echo that. I think in all the years of being in radio, some of the most instructive moments were when a listener reached out and said, I'm sorry, but you're flat out wrong about that. Now, there are some people who just don't like you, they don't like your
Right,
opinion, but there are
right.
also valid corrections that need to be made and heard. And that feedback is really valuable. And I always say, don't hesitate to use your voice and to reach out. And the other thing, when you talk about praying and discernment, and we're in a time of Lent. So one of the things that I'm working on is a spirit of detachment. And I really struggle with this
Mhm.
because back in the day, we did not have a tidal wave of tweets and 24-hour cable and internet giving the take on the news of the hour. And essentially, every human being has their own printing press with the advent of social media and
Right.
being able to communicate in this way. And so I often think about that. How much are we supposed to even know? How much are we supposed to be digesting? And you are in a job where this is your full-time mission. So how for you does it not swallow you? And for all of us, is there a balance? Is there a prudential middle somewhere?
I have you. It's so funny that you said swallow this because I am literally, I have a screen image on my phone of a woman like literally like going down in the water. And
Well,
I've
yeah,
taken on, I mean, I've taken on,
you're a really good swimmer because you have kept afloat. Yeah.
well, I've been doing the best I can. Here's the thing is that this past year, a really very amazing, prayerful man told me the other day, we were sitting down for coffee, and he said, Bree, it seems this past year especially, but right now especially, everybody's getting hit. Prayerful people are getting hit in their most vulnerable places, and I think it's really key, because to know thyself and know thy enemy is a big factor in warfare, right? And we are in a spiritual war, and so what is my weakness? What are the things that the devil's really hitting me on? And boy, has it been a year, let me tell you. And I know a lot of people have felt very similar, just felt like attacked. And Brooke, like the detachment is necessary. My passion is for the truth, and I think that that's why I'm able to stay afloat, is because I think to myself, I am serving the truth. And the moment, and I've said this, the moment, because I'm blessed, I can do this. The moment I see myself being compromised in one way or the other, I'm out. I'm done. I'm walking, because I
Yeah.
don't think it's worth selling myself short and selling the truth short. And I feel it as an obligation, kind of like my service in the military. It's an obligation to the people who read me or who watch me on Newsmax to see that I am trying to provide them the details and the stories behind some of the breaking news, and the sourcing, so that they can make decisions, and not to be in a panic, but think in reasonable, civil ways
And
and
I
joyful
think,
ways.
yes, and that's also, it sounds like a trite comment, but a soldier of truth as well, because that's what when there's a story and everybody's running away from a crisis or something, you're going in to cover it again, to give the voice to the voiceless and to get that out there. And we're so grateful. It's another way to serve, which actually brings me to the beautiful setting of where you are, and Rome and St. Peter's and the Vatican and the church. Is, we mentioned you're a faithful Catholic. You're also committed to bringing the truth, unvarnished, accurate to us. How hard is that for you when you see stories coming out of Rome that are personally unsettling or that are painful to cover?
There have been some stories that I have had to hand off to others because when it comes to like sexual abuse or abuse of the sacraments, those things are too close to home. I can't handle them personally. I get emotionally involved, and like I said, I don't want to find myself compromised one way or the other, because these are complicated situations. They're so complicated, and who at the end of the day is responsible? If there's a priest who has victimized someone, is the bishop responsible for that? If the bishop says he didn't know, is he responsible for that? Well, in my opinion, in the chain of command, the highest person with the secret is the one who's responsible, right? So,
Right.
but it's not as these are lives, these are souls. One of the things that have really caused me a lot of stress has been the McCarrick story, because it's the Vatican, and the Vatican knew a lot of this. And I know from victims that what they truly desire is repentance and restoration. And we haven't really seen that. There's been a lot of one pointing to the other, and there's a lot of hypocrisy on both sides, I must say. So it is very, very difficult at times, but what drives me is, again, the truth. And I believe that there's a necessity to serve the truth, even if it means transparency here. And it's one of the things that I've said, Brooke, for those of us who are journalists, especially those of us who report on the Vatican, we have to live our lives transparently. We're not going to be perfect by any means. We are so broken, all of us in society today. Keep close to the sacrament, especially the sacrament of confession and the sacrament of the Eucharist, but also live our lives transparently, because the devil works in darkness, and he will come out and undermine the truth by putting the story on you, right? So to
Yep.
live your life in accordance with the faith. And if you can't do that for whatever reason, if you have a secret, you're living with someone, for example, and it's maybe not the greatest thing, and you're not in a relationship that's of God, then you have to ask yourself, could that be possibly affecting the way that I am reporting on the church? And if that's the case,
That
then
is so important.
you have to be the person who is responsible enough to say, I serve the truth, and therefore I need to step away from this story. And I think that not a lot of people do that nowadays, because again, the temptation for fame or the temptation for money or an ideology gets the better, and that's where the devil gets in nowadays.
Yeah, absolutely. And we reflect on this so much during this time of Lenten pilgrimage. The
Yes.
ways in the opening season premiere, I talked about that through the world, through our own flesh, and through the enemy. These are the three areas that we're tempted. And certainly when it comes to pride, when it comes to, I mean, that was one of the ways that the enemy tempted our Lord in the desert. It was a road to
Right.
political popularity, or, the fame and the glory. And that just, in our day and age, it always has, speaks to that flesh part of us for sure. An
Exactly.
enormous story. I know that this sounds silly, but I was so proud of you, and I was so touched by your coverage of the interview you had with Cardinal Zen, his plight, the way that you articulated the story. You had the honor of sitting down with him when he was in Rome. Could you explain what's happening with him for those that don't know, and what that interview was like for you?
Oh, um, Cardinal Zen, I have to tell you, this was completely a godsend, a God wink, because I was sitting in a cafe on the Borgo, where I am very close to where I live, and drinking with a coffee with a friend. And I was literally saying, "I'm done. I'm going to walk away." I literally was saying, "I'm done
Wow.
with Catholic media. I don't like the dissensions. I don't like the fighting back and forth. The political. I just don't want to deal with that. It's like what you were talking about, spiritual discernment, when you see in Galatians the spirit of the flesh, and what are the fruits of the flesh, what are the fruits of the spirit. I see a lot of
Right.
that dissension and division. So I was like, I'm walking. And my friend said, Bree, there's Cardinal Zen. I said, what? Because I had been talking with him for 2 years, and I had asked him if he had any plans to return to see the Pope, and he said no. And I turn around, and there he is. So I go up and I said, you're evident that he gets this big smile because he recognizes me and we talk. And
Wow.
I'm like, can you come over for breakfast tomorrow? Me being like the American, not knowing the different like things
So
that you're
was he with
supposed
an
to do or whatnot.
entourage or was he just
No, he was just
alone?
with his
His
secretaries,
secretary or
and they came
wow.
over for breakfast, and we had this breakfast like 2 hour conversation, where we spoke about so many things off record and on record. It was like I got to see one of my spiritual fathers and really tried to place the persecuted Chinese Christians who are on my heart, just like the persecuted Christians in the Middle East, the persecuted Christians all over the world. That is one of my missions. Like, that is one of my goals, is to place a voice, put a face and a name to the persecution. And he honored me with that. And I was so blessed to have been able to do that. And Brooke, not only was he willing to do that, then I was able to connect him to EWTN, my friend at EWTN, and immediately they were able to schedule a time for him to sit down with them. So it was like boom, boom, boom. We were able to get his voice out, which was, I mean, it was amazing. It was a godsend. And you could see, like, I mean, to that, again, it opened up the fact, maybe God wants me to continue on doing the media work.
Yes, confirmation. I mean, you
Yeah,
think about that straight line from that conversation to, and his story. His, if for those that don't understand, can you just, now I don't want to say understand,
right.
but haven't heard maybe what's going on in China and with Cardinal Zen, can you just give us a quick snapshot?
Sure. So Cardinal Zen was actually ordained in mainland China, and that was under the Communist Party at the time. He is a Salesian, and he eventually was made Cardinal Archbishop of Hong Kong. He is a dear, dear friend of Pope Benedict. He knew very well Pope John Paul II, and he's been very much involved with engaging and advocating for the church, the underground church in China. So he retired, and here comes Pope Francis and the Francis Pontificate. And he engaged with Pope Francis, knew him when he was a cardinal and a bishop. And what he started to see, though, was out of the Secretariat of State some machinations that he knew were taking place before Pope Francis. It took place before Pope Benedict and during John Paul II's day, that there were individuals who were really trying to make an effort to come together with the CCP for the Chinese church. But every time it landed on the desk of the popes, they said, no, we're not going to make a deal with the communists and sell out our people. And so when that happened under Pope Francis, Cardinal Zen said, no, 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 this cannot happen. And we don't even know the details. I don't even know the details. I'm the Chinese cardinal, and I don't even know the details. So he came to Rome and spoke with both Pope Francis and Cardinal Pietro Parolin, who is the Secretary of State. And I wrote about that. I covered that. I believe I just translated his story for Lifesite for them. And that happened in July of 2019, I think. And then, pandemic hit and all of that took place. And now we've had this renewal of the Sino-Vatican deal, still secret. No one knows what's the deals, what's in there for the Chinese Christians. But what we do know is that the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, can choose the bishops that go over this patriotic church that they founded. And I don't know how that's apostolic. Cardinal Zen has said even Pope Francis says that they're in schism. So how is it possible that they can actually be part of the church, the body of Christ, if they were chosen and ordained by the CCP? And so those are the conversations that probably should have been taking place before they made a deal with the CCP.
Well, I pulled from your article a quote, and he said, "I've done more than I can, and there is nothing more to do other than prayer. If tomorrow the Vatican chooses this bishop, blessed by Beijing, if they appoint this bad bishop for Hong Kong, my job is finished and I will choose to disappear." His heart, his faithfulness is so evident for not only our Lord, but the church.
Right.
And the people who are persecuted there, the underground.
Yes, and he has been nothing but an advocate. He has been nothing but an advocate on this. And it breaks my heart because you can see that he has expended himself. And the bishop that he's talking about is that right now, Hong Kong does not have a bishop. They've been waiting for years now for a new bishop. They have a cardinal who was after Cardinal Zen, who's kind of CCP friendly, who has put forth some names of individuals who, again, are CCP friendly. And Cardinal Zen said, "You don't know your people. You cannot have someone who is representing the CCP. You've got to have people who, a man of the church."
Which is an atheistic entity.
Yeah. He has asked, now he's called upon Cardinal Tagle, who is now in charge of the dicastery for the missions, which is what one of the powers that actually advised Pope Francis to please put forth a name of a bishop who is a man of the people. And that's all he can do.
Yeah. Well, and that brings me to something else, which is so difficult worldwide. I mean, you're tasked with covering, I know you cover news of the church, but also global events. But touching on the Biden presidency, he is the second Catholic president elected to the office of commander-in-chief. I understand reportedly in his office, the Oval Office, there's a picture of he and Pope Francis. And yet we know that he is outside of the church teachings on preeminent issues such as abortion, to cite just that example. But it takes us back, I think, to the media reporting on his Catholicism. This is very difficult for Catholics who are faithful. And even in the USCCB, I know that there has been conflicting statements and opinions. Right. I don't even know. I have so many questions about that. I guess, first of all, how can we expect, so we maybe know what to expect, that his faith is going to be covered over his term? Because right now, when I see mainstream journalism, it seems like it's a done issue. He's a devout Catholic. That's often how I hear it described. But rarely a mention that this is in conflict with church teaching, that he's outside of the fold. I guess, how is the media? How should we expect that's going to be covered? And for faithful Catholics, I guess always and forever, our main mission is to pray.
Right.
Pray for conversion.
And I would say it's we're already seeing how they're going to spin this, and it is a spin. We've had Cardinal Burke come out and say, no, you cannot receive communion. He's done that multiple times now. We've had other bishops do the same, and then we've had Cardinal Gregory come out and say, well, that was an unfortunate situation. We've had Cardinal Supich do the same. So we are seeing that internal struggle, internal conflict that we are seeing in the church. I would say for regular Catholics like you and I, all we can do is continuously spout what the church has always taught 2,000 years. Keep showing that, and it doesn't need to come off of our authority. Use what the church has said. Use what the doctors of the church have said. Use what the saints have said. Just put that out over and over and over again. I've actually advised a bishop about that. Your Grace, you are a teaching bishop. That's what you're supposed to do. Form your people. Teach what the church has always taught. It doesn't have to come off of your authority, even though you do have the authority. They can't counter 2,000 years of church teaching and tradition. They can try, but they've tried in the past. They've tried to infiltrate the church in the past, and it's never worked because Christ has made us a promise, right? So how is it going to reflect on the Biden presidency? They are going to do everything they can in the way of propaganda to say he is an example of Catholicism, and the rest of you are antiquated and extreme. That's how they'll do it.
I have to say, I think it was out of Germany originally published, and I don't remember the journalist's name, so I apologize. But there was an article in which he he put forth this idea of, because we know there is division from the highest levels all the way down, could there be a schism? This great reset that we hear about, and that there are deep divides. We know that because the church is made up of sinful human beings. That's always been the case. But
Right.
the church founded by Christ will remain. However, I wondered if you have heard that and your thoughts on that.
Germany, I would say, I think you're going to have to take a look at the facts that are coming out of Germany, but I would say that there are some real concerns about schism with Germany, and it's because the Pope has made himself very clear about certain things with regards to synodality and what the limitations are on that, and yet the German church has come back and said, no, we're going to do how we want to do, and we're going to inform you how we're doing things. So that is at a head. Right. And I think doctrinally they're way off the map, but that's kind of been the case, I think, for decades within Germany. Of course, there are, always, some things that we're hearing because it hits the media more than others. But, there are very good Catholics everywhere. So, but in reality, yes, I think that when you don't accept the teachings of the church, and we're talking about 2,000 years of history, doctrine, and tradition. We're not talking about what one particular bishop or cardinal or even pope has said, but the fullness of it. If you're not willing to do that, then you are de facto schisming yourself, from the head. So, yeah.
I hope to have you back because, oh my goodness, there's just so many things. Because I wanted to talk about globally persecuted Christians, so many other things. But I want to end, because we have to wrap up on a hopeful note. What has been maybe the most inspiring story that you've covered? Because you really do cover it all. And I just encourage people to visit you. I know that you're on Twitter and on Facebook and on all the platforms, also your website, but you really have beautiful stories. You have insightful stories. And it just made me wonder, like, what has filled your heart that you've covered recently?
Oh gosh, that's so hard. That's a good question to ask me. I love the story of Saint Joseph, that I just published with Father Calloway. That to me was a miraculous thing, and he's such a need for this time. But another story that really has filled my heart has been the story of Hala Goloro, who is a young Christian from Iraq. She was in Mosul at age 11, and she escaped with her family with only the clothes on her back, and for years escaped ISIS. And yet she ended up being the number one in her class and the only female Christian. And she's actually going to be covered by EWTN. She just was interviewed today by Colin Flynn, my friend and colleague, about what she's been doing. She is just an amazing mind. She is amazing, like heart for God, and she's just multifaceted. She sings. She's studying dentistry, and she's such a strong Catholic woman. So she really is an inspiration to me.
Oh, wow. Okay, we're pre-recording this. So by the time this video is seen, our interview is heard and seen, that should be out, do you think?
It will be out,
The
I think.
story? Okay.
Yes, I think it will
And
be.
you teased us, and I saw it shared all over, and I'm like, oh, I need to go back and read this. But for those that don't know, because I personally didn't read it yet, the story about St. Joseph, the year of St. Joseph, can you just give us, you just touched on it, a quick
Yes,
tease?
go read it because, and share it with everyone. Make it go viral. That's what I'm asking everyone to do, because this should be a time of hope for us to see that God is working, So we know on December 8th, Pope Francis made this declaration worldwide that it will be the year of St. Joseph, right? But what we don't know is that in 2019, Father Calloway wrote a letter and it had it hand delivered by a bishop from Argentina, a brand new bishop from Argentina, hand delivered to the Pope a request for a year of St. Joseph. And the story is just miraculous in what happened. And now, just this past month, Father Calloway has sent another letter, and he is asking Pope Francis to make permanent a feast on the dedication of Our Lady and St. Joseph's marriage. And what we need
Oh.
right now is St. Joseph, who is such a man for masculine men. And he really has some very, very hard words to say to even Catholic men who are seeking virtue right now. He has said that impurity of intention, impurity of thought and word and deed, even men who are seeking virtue, if they're praying impurely, like looking at themselves narcissistically, they have become spiritually impotent. This is what he has said. And he said,
Mm.
Saint Joseph is the key to this. So please go and read it because it's
Amen.
just an amazing, amazing story.
We love Father Calloway. He's been on the show before. His consecration to St. Joseph, I think, has caused such a revival.
Yes.
My mom in the convent, she took her name, Sister Josina, after St. Joseph, and she might be kind of the special forces, like so many we don't even know, praying for something like this to
Yes.
happen. So,
Yes.
oh, that is the best. Well, we will read, we will share not only that, but all the things that you do. We're just so grateful for. And so for people that want to connect with you, what's the best way?
I'm on all the social media. So Twitter's the best. Please follow me on Twitter because I really push a lot of things out very immediately. So it's at Bree A. Dail. I'm also on May We. I'm on Gab. I'm on Parler, and I'm also on Facebook. So please follow me on all of those things. Retweet. Let's get it out. I'm on with Newsmax. I am on with other outlets soon to be announced. And then I have also my regular work with National Catholic Register, whom I love dearly. So
That, and we are so grateful for the partnership and more to come. So God bless you. And as we started, the sun was starting to set. Now
yeah, now
it
I've got
is
my
a
lights.
twilight. Yes, and your lights are on.
Yeah.
And I wish you could fit us all on your porch, but we'll just have to settle for
Come
this for
on
now.
over. I've got like
Oh
a
my
little fire
goodness.
pit, and if you like dogs.
Cannot wait, yes, to be able to do that again
Yes.
someday, to travel to get back there. So God bless you. In the meantime, we will just connect with you, and thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you as well, and may God bless you, and please pray for me, everyone.